Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. Let's talk about something obscure, niche, and perhaps a little bit odd for the channel. Why not? I've got a few guests on today to discuss this particular topic, because I think it's an interesting one, and there's a number of different perspectives that can be brought to it that are kind of relevant. So, to set the scene before I introduce our guests here, what we have is a little game you might have heard of called Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. And a fellow you may have heard of who's been on the Co-optional podcast at one point, Greg Miller of kindafunny.com, has a review copy of this game and also permission from Konami to publish a limited Let's Play of the game prior to the title's release, and is planning on one episode a day for 2 weeks of Let's Play. This has caused consternation, to say the least. Lots of very, very silly remarks and horrible things sent his particular way. But I think it brings up a number of interesting topics, and I brought a couple of guests on the show to talk about that. And the first fellow goes by the name of Jim Sterling. Welcome to the show.
Hello. It's a pleasure to be on. I will keep my opinions of Konami down to a minimum.
Yes, but feel free. You know, we don't mind a little bit of Konami bashing here and there. Make sure to pull the lever, though.
Oh yes, pull the lever.
Pull the lever.
It's fever mode.
Dear God. And I brought Jim on particularly because I think he's in an interesting and unique position, very similar to Greg's, where he was part of traditional games journalism for a while and then struck out on his own, and now does a little bit of everything, wears many hats. And my second guest goes by the name of Slowbeef. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to have you on. And the reason Sorry, go ahead.
I would like to just say I'm happy to bash Konami if Jim's not doing that, because I haven't gotten a chance to in a while, so I'm very happy to unload on them.
Yeah, I'll pretend to like them for the sake of argument. that might be quite difficult. Now, I brought Slowbeef onto the show because we're dealing, of course, with Let's Play, and Slowbeef's been involved in Let's Play for longer than almost anybody, arguably, and has gone sort of through the eras of it, from when it was a very, very small niche thing that was being done on the SA forums, all the way to now when the biggest YouTube channel in the world, bigger than everything, is essentially a Let's Play channel. So very few people have more experience than him when it comes to this particular medium. So, Metal Gear Solid 5. So, needless to say, it's one of the biggest releases of the year, and historically, the Metal Gear series has been an extremely story-driven franchise. Hideo Kojima has been lauded by many people for his storytelling, even though it's a little bit weird from time to time, and many people are excited to see the conclusion of a very lengthy story arc. So, I'd like to get both of your first impressions on the notion that part of this story arc will be online, free to watch, prior to the game coming out. Slowbeef.
I'm going to tell you, when this was first announced, this sort of early Let's Play, the initial tweet that I was pointed to was, I'm playing Metal Gear Solid 5. I'm just reading it in front of me. Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. Sunday, I start showing you my 2 weeks of Let's Plays, my review. And there's been this sort of, since Let's Play, the market's kind of flooded and it's very competitive, there have been people who try to jump the gun. They try to do day zero Let's Plays, we call them, where you find a mom and pop shop that's going to break street date, or you, get a leaked copy somehow, and you just kind of prepare it ahead of time, or even jump the gun, because you're not under an embargo, since you're doing it kind of, off kilter, I guess you could say. So to that end, when I first heard of that, it's annoying, because if you wanted to sort of have the unspoiled game experience, even with a day one Let's Play, you can at least theoretically buy the game, not watch it, not worry about your friends talking about it on social media and everything. But 2 weeks ahead, when you have really no chance of playing the game yourself, you're just going to have to, I guess, go into sort of a social media blackout and not talk to your friends who might be watching it and things like that, which is a little unrealistic, I think. I've learned now that he's keeping it to, Mission 5, I believe, which is better. And it is endorsed by Konami. It's not just he got some advanced copy, through some, auspicious way. But, so it's better, but I don't really understand exactly what it's going to be, So I'm still a little confused, and maybe concerned is the wrong word, but I don't quite know what he's doing exactly with it,
Yeah, that's very true, and of course we'll find out, I suppose, once it starts to come out. He hasn't said a great deal On this
Right.
topic, though, he has been abundantly clear that the first mission, which I believe the intro chapter, I don't know that much about the storyline. I heard it's got something to do with a hospital or something along those lines, and I think obviously it connects to Ground Zeroes in some way. So
Right.
some people are really concerned about that. Now, he said that he will actually publish that video out of order. He will not publish that first. That'll go up after launch.
Okay.
But outside of that, the only assurance he's given is no spoilers in the thumbnails and nothing beyond Mission 5. Now, Jim, what do you think of this when you first heard about it?
Right, well, first of all, I'd like to say that I hate Konami.
Of course.
And its executives can eat a bucket of bees, but that's neither here nor there.
Did I missed my opportunity.
Oh, there's plenty of time. You'll be fine.
I've taken it back, and as we all know, I have exclusive rights on the Konami hate. And that would be horrible if that was the case. I feel that's something we can all enjoy as a family. But to this, I think the main thing it did was reinforce something I've kind of seen on the horizon for a while with regards to YouTube, where one of the good things about YouTube and Let's Play in particular was that it was this anyone can have a go Wild West thing. And that was very exciting, and obviously it led to, as you would know, Beef, having worked on Retropray, it did lead to a lot of guff, a lot of crap, but it also led to some breakout stars. And,
Absolutely.
And still does. I mean, even now, even with the pecking order in place, there's still an opportunity for someone to just get by on their personality. I mean, I can't play games for shit, but I get by on my personality. And there is still that opportunity, but we nonetheless are in this world of I would call the haves and the have-nots, in which some people, and I don't necessarily fault them. I mean, it's a competitive environment. You take what advantages you can get, and I certainly won't say that I haven't benefited from my prior experience in the games industry when it came to moving into the independent scene, having made contacts with PR and publishers so that I can still get review copies for things, and having like the Steam press account and all this kind of stuff, and you work those advantages. And I certainly wouldn't have a go at Kind of Funny, and I should say for the record that I am friends with the Kind of Funny guys. So you're
the LP bourgeois we're worried about, is what you're getting.
Yes, I'm part of the problem. Right. I am the man saying let them eat cake in the palace. But I wouldn't actually say bourgeois. I'm kind of one of the peasants who climbed over the wall and ran into the palace and is eating as much cake as he can before he gets thrown out.
No, totally. And I totally feel you on that. And you're right. And because one of the big appeals of Let's Play is also that notion of I can do this too. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off or anything, but it's this notion now that happens with day one LPs and people getting review copies of, it's sort of like barriers to entry where the market is pretty flooded with good and bad stuff, but now people are using connections and things like that, and it kind of makes Let's Play from sort of a community kind of, hey, we're all playing and showing each other video games and doing funny things, and it's like going to your friend's house and watching it on the couch type of deal, to something else.
Yeah, and one of the fears I've had for a long time, is that it turns the YouTube environment more and more into the old games media environment, which is where I came from. And I don't want to go back there. Please don't send me back there. That's not to cast aspersions on any of the people who work in old games media still. I still have a great deal of respect for a lot of people who still work at established publications.
Right.
But that environment of haves and have-nots, exclusives, one of the things that gets under my skin the most is the world exclusive review. Now, IGN's done this before, Games Radar's done this before. I've had it offered to me before. I actually had it offered to me for Enslaved Odyssey to the West, that Namco Bandai game. And we turned it down at Destructoid because I'm like, I hate those things. I hate world exclusive reviews because even if they're not dodgy, even if you've not agreed to something, it still has that appearance of you having agreed to something. It has that appearance of impropriety.
Yeah, because
and I don't want that.
Everybody knows that some sort of deal has gone down, even if no money has changed hands.
You had to agree to something.
You're still being given value. You're being given a consideration that has some value, and that value comes in traffic. That value comes in coming first, and we've seen so many examples of dodgy ones. I remember very keenly the world exclusive review of Hellgate London from PC Gamer that gave it a stonking, like, high 80s review, and then out comes every other review that said this game is just hot garbage. It's awful. What are you doing? This is a terrible disappointment. And we've seen it time and again. IGN is a great example because they still run IGN first, which is, we get world exclusive on this and this and this and this and this, and they run huge amounts of coverage in exchange for what? I don't know. It's most likely just in exchange for, we'll give you audience in return for you giving us essentially the keys to the throne at that point.
9 times out of 10, there's nothing shady going on.
Yeah, there's no brown envelopes.
Yeah, but you still look at it and you're just like, why would you make yourself look shady? Well, I guess if it's worth it for the traffic trade-off, maybe. But, we've seen this, like, when you talked about the famous ones, I always think about CVG, back when they were a magazine, way back when.
Yeah.
And they had the first review up of Rise of the Robots, where they said it was this fantastic game. They bigged it up so much. And you have to wonder, even if they weren't deliberately trying to mislead people, there's got to be some subconscious pressure there of, we've got the world exclusive review. We like having a world exclusive review.
We'd like another one, please.
Yeah, we'd like another one, please. And that's always an issue for me. And this is something I worry about in YouTube, in the YouTube world. My first experience with that was when I was working on covering Among the Sleep by Krillbite. It was that first-person horror game in which you are a baby.
Oh yeah, that
essentially.
One. Screw everything about that. I'm not going anywhere near that with a 10-foot barge pole. No.
And I had a preview build of it back when I was sort of doing... Actually, this was after I was doing previews, but if someone were to send me an early version of a game, I'm like, yeah, I might do a Let's Play of it or something.
Yeah.
And they said that they were fine with me doing that, but I couldn't put it on YouTube because they already had an exclusive deal with PewDiePie.
Right.
Yeah.
And he was the guy who could cover Among the Sleep on YouTube. I'm still working at The Escapist at the time, so I had to run it. I ran it as an Escapist video. I think I actually ran it as an extra Jimquisition, because that was my platform at the time. And that was just because I really wanted to... I really believed in that project, and I wanted to show it off because it was so promising. But the idea that I had to wait until I could put it on YouTube, I'm like, this is getting eerily reminiscent of things, and I don't like where that's going.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And, too, even close to the topic on hand, if you remember Metal Gear Solid 4, I believe, Konami said with review copies, they had this embargo where if you want to talk about it beforehand, I think there were certain things in your reviews that you couldn't mention, like...
I remember that.
Cutscenes, cutscene lengths, and things like that. Which is sort of interesting in this case then, too, because if Konami's exercising that sort of, or attempting to exercise that sort of editorial control on the review, you have to wonder, like, well, what are they telling Miller that, he can play and he can't play? And are they? Or are they saying there's certain things you can't do?
And then you have to wonder, like, whether that's always necessarily a bad thing. Because there's a game I'm reviewing right now. I've not had to sign anything, I could talk about these things.
Right.
But it gets to that point of what you would call, I guess, a gentleman's agreement.
Right.
And I won't name it, but you'll know it when it comes out. I'll probably just say it when it comes out. But the notes I have that talk about, the review date embargo and all that, they have a page of spoilers. And... Just that, with a note that they respectfully ask that you do not mention the following
common,
thing.
Actually. Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with that necessarily, so long as you're not giving me these NDAs that actually talk about things that I feel I should be criticizing. I don't have an issue with people just saying, could you not mention this because we want it to be a surprise?
Sure.
And most people reading a review or watching a video review would want you to abide by that.
But, the specific case I mentioned, too, in Metal Gear Solid 4, IGN actually had made sort of a deal about this where they said, or a deal on their website where they said, we know you're going to be seeing some reviews of Metal Gear Solid 4 today. We're not going to participate because we don't agree with what Konami has asked us to do. So it didn't seem to me, and obviously you two would know more about this than I would, but it didn't seem to me to be a case of, hey, if you don't mind, could you not mention certain things or we consider these spoilers? It was... it was sort of like an agreement, you know, I don't know if it was contractual or what, that if you're going to do this, you can't, if you want an early review or you want to publish that, that's the rules of the embargo, is you cannot talk about these certain things.
Yeah, I've had a few like that. I think it was Remember Me in particular. They said, well, you can put some stuff out before launch, but it has to be 10 minutes or less of footage. And if you do any more than that, then we will take it down, basically. Right. So you had to agree to that. There have been other games that have had such stipulations. I've generally just not done them, and then the games come out. I'm like, I'll just do it now then, because you can't hold me to anything now the game's out.
That's actually a situation I'm in at the moment with the game. It's like,
doesn't surprise me.
10 minutes, it's like, well, that's not a good video. And again, I don't feel there's anything malicious about it. I think they're that concerned, because it's a story-driven game and they're that concerned about spoilers.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, you know, I can wait till launch to do that, you know?
Yeah, the problem is, of course, as perhaps people have figured out by now, if you wait until launch, you are giving up a competitive advantage, and this is what some of the issue with this Metal Gear Solid 5 Let's Play is about. This idea that there is a competitive advantage to somebody that has access to a full review copy. We're not talking about this little YouTube, I think YouTube has got sent something called a boot camp for this, which is like a small part of the game. He's got the full thing, and it's currently embargoed, which means that he can't talk about it until a certain date, and that's when the reviews are going to come out. But the embargo is not launch day. The embargo is prior to the game coming out. So he has a period where reviews will come out, but nobody, unless, I suppose, the other people that got review copies were also able to do it, could release a Let's Play of it. So he's in this strange and unique position where he's acting journalistically by providing a traditional review. And then he's acting essentially as an entertainer by providing a Let's Play. And he is gaining an advantage from the fact that he has a review copy to execute this Let's Play before anybody else can. And some people were not too happy about that. So what do you reckon to that, Slowbeef?
Well, it's like I said, too, it kind of gets into the, or as Jim said, too, the haves, the have-nots, you know? There's like a sort of rich get richer almost system, as silly as that sounds, where if you have these connections and you know you have these review copies, you can start preparing your Let's Play before day one, you know?
Yeah, sure.
And when day one comes out, you already have these videos out there. You get more popular. Now that you're more popular, more people come to you to say, hey, could you promote my game? And it kind of gets in there. So it's tough for new talent to kind of come in and say, hey, I'm pretty good too. How do I get a review copy? And it's like, well, you don't. You have like,
because you're not a reviewer or whatever. There are Let's Players who do get this early access specifically to Let's Play. If I recall correctly, the Rad Brad has made his living off of this in a big way. And he often is able to put out at least a couple of parts of a game before anybody else does, and that's given him a huge boost.
Absolutely.
Because, of course, there's no other competition out at the time.
And it also kind of like lowers the quality of things, because you get so many people rushing for day one, they don't have time to figure out, like, maybe there's a control issue, or, you know,
maybe I need to edit out these deaths. Or,
yeah, exactly.
Maybe I could do something a little bit better here.
Right, or I genuinely don't have time to, because if I wait a couple of hours to do that, someone's going to beat me to the punch. I won't be in the search results, and, you know, I'm just going to have to push and push and push, you know, content, I mean.
Yes.
You know, so there's that too. So there you get a lot of Let's Players, I think, who feel kind of like, oh, what, you know, why is this guy getting this, and I can't do that. You get Metal Gear fans who are very, very invested in the story, and you can say things like, well, then don't watch the video, but I think anybody who has opted not to watch Game of Thrones knows kind of how realistic that is, you know.
I have filters on my Twitter to try and stop things, you know.
There's a reason why when I'm watching a show that has already been out for a while and I'm just now getting into it, I didn't talk about Battlestar Galactica until I had finished watching the entire run, because I did not want people, because you could just go on my Ask FM or just do a post on a random YouTube comment in one of my videos and just spoil shit, and I'm like, I keep that under wraps, because as you said, it's not realistic to just avoid spoilers.
Right, and this is Kojima's, sort of last game at Konami, the conclusion to Metal Gear again. And, everything's going to be right. There's going to be big things, and suppose, like, there's another something like the Snake Raiden swap out in Metal Gear Solid 2, hypothetically. That's never being kept under wraps, that's really hard to avoid.
Yeah.
Or really any big plot twist. Someone dies early, someone dies later. I have no idea, obviously. You know, I didn't get my review copy. But,
Yeah, I haven't got mine yet, weirdly.
I haven't got mine either. So we got told you're on the list. I'm like, well,
I got that today as well. I expected to not even get that far, but good job Konami has such bad internal communication that I'm just going to push my luck past that blacklist.
you might.
I'm just going to push my luck.
You very well might be able to pull that off. Well, since we're on spoilers, let's deal with that before we kind of go back to competitive advantage then.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to ask both of you, and then I'll give my own personal opinion on this as well. What level of responsibility does someone who has Let's Play essentially as part of their job description, who is an entertainer, what level of responsibility does he have to prevent the spread of spoilers, especially when he's been handed a golden ticket to some very, very popular videos? What is his level of responsibility? Is this a case of, well, let's blame the ammo supplier because someone shot someone over there in another state, you know? Is it that, or are spoilers so common and so predictable that you should know if you're creating videos like that? You should have a reasonable expectation that this is going to harm at least somebody's experience, even if they go out of their way to avoid it.
Well, firstly, I mean, the one thing you notice if you do Let's Play for a while is your first video is the one that gets all the views.
Yep.
And everything kind of tapers off since then. So...
First and the last.
Exactly. So I do feel like a lot of professional Let's Players, or I shouldn't say a lot, but like there are very many who say, you know, they know that, so they post the first video and they wait a bit for the second. So even with day one Let's Plays, which used to kind of bother me, you could say, okay, it is graduated out. So it's not like the whole thing goes up day one, right? But again,
Most of the time.
Yeah, but exactly though, because you get other people then who say, no, I'm going to beat everybody to the punch. I have all 14 hours of footage globbed in one video, and then I'm going to put that up.
Cut it up to 15 minutes? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But, you know, I mean, and it's that kind of thing. And it's nice, too, when you do see certain A-listers. Like, I know Northern Lion will only post a Day 1 Let's Play when he feels like he's prepared it a bit. You know, he didn't do it for Bloodborne, for example, because he said, even though people are asking, I just don't feel prepared to do it, and things like that. It's good for to have that responsibility, and I think your audience will respect you more for it, you know, and maybe even understand why you're not first out of the gate with that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm in an odd position where I really try and make sure that the game is not necessarily the thing you're coming for if you go to my channel.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, I won't say that I don't have competitive. Well, I already said earlier, I have competitive advantages. They do help make coverage easier. You know, if I'm reviewing something like Lords of the Fallen, I can press the record button for a bit, and then I've got a Let's Play to go up after my review goes up, and I've gotten it up quicker and easier, and that is a competitive advantage I have that I do use, and I don't hold it against any individual. My problem's more with the companies, the publishers that exploit it, more than the YouTubers who use it, because it's a competitive market. Use what you've got.
Yeah.
But as far as the spoiler thing goes, I certainly try and avoid it, and I try. It's a tough balance, because the whole spoiler culture we have is such a tangled web, where some people fetishize the idea of unspoiled content too much. Some people go too far in trying to tear down that fetishization to where both sides end up just complete assholes.
Yes.
I remember I saw you, TotalBiscuit, earlier, a few months ago, before E3, talking about people who were upset because of posts that were talking about leaks, E3 leaks.
Yes.
And they're like, you're spoiling E3.
I laughed.
Spoilers for a marketing event. I mean, come on. You have some dignity.
Yeah, I was going to say, come on, you got to have some principles somewhere. You can't be that consumer-driven.
Yeah, just a little bit of self-respect. But it is a tough thing, and I say this as someone who does written reviews as well. You know, I love to do written reviews. It's one of my favorite things to do. And I also review a lot of Telltale games. These are like all story, and people hate spoilers on Telltale games.
Yeah, I've had to take some particular what's the term I'm looking for? some rather extreme measures to try and avoid that. In the case of, I looked at my production and I thought to myself, well, I mean, I've got to show some gameplay, but isn't everything a spoiler in a Telltale game? I mean, yeah, it is. So I said, the way that I do Telltale at episodic games now is I record the first 20 minutes, I then lower the volume down to such a degree of the game that you couldn't hear the voiceover. It's just kind of a mumbling in the background. And if you want to listen to what I have to say and not get spoiled, you can minimize the window and essentially listen to it as a podcast.
Right.
And if you want to see what's said, I have the subtitles on the screen. And I mean, I don't have to do that really for any other game, but for episodic story-driven stuff, it's more of a service because people will actively avoid your video if you don't take those measures.
You have to assure them that there are no spoilers there.
Yeah, you do.
And in the written space, when I'm trying to criticize something that's all story, it's very hard to do. And I pride myself on having perhaps the most spoiler-free written reviews. And even then, they're often not good enough for some people.
Oh, yeah.
But as an example, the written review for Tales from the Borderlands Episode 4 that went out this week, my review for it is 405 words long. And that includes a whole paragraph where I talk about how short the review is. Because all I could do at some points was just say, there's this QTE in there that's one of the best things Telltale's ever done. I can't tell you what it is because you'd be upset with me. But it's really good. Trust me, it's really good. So it's so difficult to do. And I sympathise with anyone trying to find that line between finding something that's entertaining and something that isn't a spoiler.
No, absolutely. And even stuff that, like, Konami has shown in the game, too. I'm sure there are people out there who are like, I didn't want to know that the Fulton goes into a wormhole. That's too much, you know? And it's like, you kind of can't win on some of that front. So I understand that.
Well, I mean, that's a whole other issue, is that the whole the spoiler issue gets wrapped up into marketing so readily. Like, there was a trailer for, what was it called, The Martian or something? Some film that's coming out recently?
Yes. Yeah.
The trailer basically gave away everything.
God, I hated the fact that I watched that trailer. It bothered me immensely. The weird thing is, that, and I don't have a source for this to hand, but what I've seen is that the strange logic behind all of it is that people are more likely, on average, to go and see a movie if they have those critical plot points spoiled because they don't feel they're going in blind to something they won't understand.
You know, it's funny you say that. I did read that. Which is, it's odd because I know there's the whole argument like, well, if a story is banking on a spoiler, it's not a very good story.
It's not a good story. Yeah.
Right. Plot twists do give you that thrill, especially when they're done really well, of that, like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing this in a whole new context now, you know, that kind of thing.
It just worries me that we won't get another experience like From Dusk Till Dawn or The Descent, where you're watching one movie and then towards the end it becomes this whole other film. Because nowadays marketing wants to tell you that it's this whole... Or to bring it back to video games. I mean, Metal Gear Solid 2 promoted these days, we'd already known that the tanker episode and the rig episode were two different things.
Absolutely.
We'd already know that. And I'm trying to say that to avoid spoilers because that's a whole other issue, the statute of limitations.
Yeah, what is the statute of limitations on spoilers?
I got people pissed off at me because I spoiled one of the most famous deaths in video games in Final Fantasy VII, something that is part of cultural osmosis. Some people called me a prick.
Eris dies. Don't even care.
Yeah, there you go. It's done. Yeah.
Sorry.
And you know, the silly thing about that is the statute of limitations almost reset as a result of them doing a remake of it, because now a bunch of people that never played it in the first place are like, well, you know, I don't want my experience spoiled when I get to dive into this in the first case. But the game's been open. You know, I call it the I am your father statute.
I was about to bring that up.
Yeah. That's what I told someone. Someone told me I was a prick, and I'm like, do you know Vader's Luke's dad? Do you know that or not? It's like, I understand not wanting to be spoiled, but I think once it becomes cultural osmosis, once it becomes something that is so tied to the identity of a product, then I really think the statutes let up.
And I think the problem with what's going on here, especially with how it was first phrased, is we really had no idea what Miller was going to show in these Let's Plays. We still kind of don't.
We still don't, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's part of the reason there is this sort of outrage over it, I guess you could say, like in a lot of initial reactions, including my own. because you have this notion that someone's not only like doing it earlier than anyone else can, but it might even be without any sort of regard for that stuff before you realized it was produced by Konami, or that they okayed it.
And the other issue is you can't even know what's a spoiler anymore. Like, I remember one of my early, this is going way back, but there was, I can't remember which Mario game it was, but it was a Mario game in which you can unlock Luigi. Big shock, like one of the most obvious things in the world, and the comments were livid. How dare you spoil that Luigi is in this Mario game? And this was the shock I got with the Final Fantasy VII thing when I guess I spoiled it on a Jimquisition. It's like, I did not even know that was a spoiler. There was a review, I can't remember which review I wrote recently, but someone was saying it was so spoiler heavy. I can't remember if it was Arkham Knight, that was it. I reviewed Arkham Knight. Now, I'm very careful with written reviews and spoilers. I will only talk about story in rather vague terms, so that you can only really know what I'm talking about if you've seen it.
Yeah.
Because I've got to criticize the story somehow, I've got to have that criticism.
You can't just
in
ignore
there.
it, particularly since games have become increasingly focused on narrative over the past few years.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder to do that. So I really was vague as hell. I didn't spoil anything. But then I saw comments on Reddit and elsewhere that were like, Jim Sterling review is so fucking spoiler heavy. Like, he spoils so much in it. I'm like, I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. And I still don't know what I spoiled in that review. I still don't know.
That you drive the Batmobile. I remember that from your review.
Yeah, well, I mean, to some people who really had been ignoring perhaps every piece of media about that game, that could be perceived as a spoiler, as ridiculous as that sounds.
Yeah.
What I've seen called a spoiler is skill unlocks later in the game, or gadget unlocks. People view that as a spoiler because they don't want to know what gadgets they're going to get. They want it to be a surprise. And like, well, okay.
And I'm like, if you're on that much of a media blackout, don't read reviews.
Don't read reviews. Yeah, just
like I try not to blame people too much when they're negatively affected by something.
No,
don't blame the victim, all that. But there does come to a point where if you're reading reviews for a game you don't want to know anything about, at that point you've probably got to shoulder some of the blame, mate.
Yeah, I mean, that's a kind of if you can't start the heat, get out of the kitchen sort of situation, isn't it? Really, it's just a little bit of common sense.
Yeah.
About trying to make sure you're not exposed to it.
I work so hard not to spoil anything, to the point where I'm writing 405-word reviews and feeling terrible about feeling lazy about it.
All right, I'm told that people don't have an attention span anymore, so that's perfect length. You're fine.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. I'm probably that's stretching it. I say as I'm 1,000 words through a review, I'm not even half finished yet. I work so hard to avoid it, and I still get accused of doing it, and I can't do you any better. I can't do you any better. As far as Let's Play stuff goes, my Squirty plays are almost entirely the first opening bits of a game. My first initial impressions, and I don't feel that spoils anything. I deliberately don't do games like Telltale stuff. I don't do those episodic adventure games because first of all, I don't like trying to compete with a dialogue-heavy game with my own talking, because that's just
really.
annoying.
I mean, I'm told that's how you get successful at Let's Playing. You talk over the professional voice actors, right, Slowbeef? That's how it works.
Exactly. No, at the same volume if you can, and exactly the same time.
Yeah,
it's
bonus
basically
points
this-
if you make funny voices.
Compete with the
this
game for my
cacophonic
attention.
mess. But I work really hard to avoid that, and even then I'm still accused of doing it, so there's no way to avoid spoiling things, because someone's going to get outraged no matter what. Someone will find what you did to be too far. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you shouldn't try and take steps to mitigate things. You shouldn't try and find a bit of game footage, especially if I'm doing something for a review and I've got that early advantage and I'm already partway through a game, is to find that moment where there's enough action to make an interesting video, but not too much that people are spoiled.
Yeah. Find a side quest, not a main quest, that sort of thing.
Just some basic exploration, all that kind of stuff.
Well, what's sort of interesting, though, too, and because Squirty Play is the first X amount of time in the game and such, but what's interesting about Kind of Funny Games, which is Miller's channel, is he has things he calls Let's Plays, but they're kind of short, I mean, like, So I don't know that these are actually, because I don't know that there's any sort of restriction or anything on what you can call a Let's Play. Don't get me wrong, but usually when you say something like Let's Play Battletoads, most people sort of assume you mean it's a full playthrough, maybe broken up into parts, you know? But on his channel, there's Let's Play Banjo-Kazooie, it's 31 minutes, Battletoads is 18 minutes. So, and he says Let's Plays plural in his tweet about Phantom Pain. So I feel like he's maybe using Let's Play, I don't want to say incorrectly, but more of like a marketing kind of thing almost. It's really going to be something more akin to quick looks or what have you, you know?
It is mostly quick look, you know? I mean, if I were to go to my format for a second, which is WTF is, which is very inspired by quick looks.
Right.
It's a little bit more formal, but not much. I mean, it's only formal because I'm not in any way funny, so I don't want to be compared to Giant Bomb.
I'm glad you said that, because that needs to be underlined.
Yeah, it's very important that people are aware of that before going in. I am just an insufferable bore. But whatever the case, Let's Play in this case, I think, is kind of used as a marketing term. It's a search term, particularly. It's become a very ubiquitous sort of term. I mean, even the Let's Play channel, which is owned by Rooster Teeth, right?
Right.
I'm pretty sure they do the same thing, where it's like, let's play this, and we never play it again.
Right,
So,
yeah.
Yes, they have parts, or maybe they have a shorter series where it's just a couple of parts. They don't finish it. No.
I think the term has kind of diluted somewhat.
Oh yeah,
because I mean, I used the term Let's Play to describe Squirty Play as a shorthand, just because it's a word people recognise.
Yeah,
and mechanically, I'm doing what a Let's Play does. I'm playing and talking. You know, I'm kind of fulfilling that remit. But it is again a quick look, a short snippet of a thing. And whereas something like my series that I've been doing on Fahrenheit, which is or Indigo Prophecy, whatever takes your fancy, you know, stuff like that, I guess, has its own designation now. It's become its own subset of Let's Play where we call it the long play. So you've got like just a Let's Play that encompasses all of this kind of stuff. Then you've got your quick look Let's Plays, your long play Let's Plays. So it's kind of become this catch-all term, I guess.
You newcomers to this video gameplay
here we go. I was looking forward to this bit. Here we go.
Because long plays refer to unnarrated playthroughs, usually unbroken too, by the by. Yeah, so that term's already taken, and I know very many long players who may listen to this who are going to take offense to that. I'm just going to tell you now.
Well, I'm not going back and editing the tags out of my video. That's too much effort for me, Slowbeef.
No. To be totally fair, and I don't like the internet's like sort of tendency to overclassify everything. And you don't want to say, Let's Play must be this, because you had people also early on who said, it must be unedited, which is like, hey, that's a terrible idea, hence I want to be the guy Let's Plays, and things like that, you know? It's just that, but when we talk about Let's Plays, people do get an idea in their head already of what it's going to be going in there. And you're right that now it's a marketing term, it's a search term, everybody's using it and such, you know? But I think that is what sort of led to the sort of reaction that, again, I will admit that I jumped in on before I heard some more of the information that Miller's getting about this, you know?
Yeah, because you didn't know what the format was going to be, and if you compare it to his other formats, they don't really do that. And it seems like, obviously, the reason he's doing it is obvious, and
of course.
It's because it's going to make some money. And I know some people view that as the grand evil, but simultaneously, sorry, this is kind of it's our job. So...
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the tricky thing, too, because some of the AAA-list Let's Players, there actually are people in their audience who are really unaware that those ads are making that person money.
Oh, yes.
You know?
And don't worry, the person will not make them aware anytime soon. You know,
nope.
We do it because we love it. We love it. We're passionate. You know?
Yeah. It's that kind of like, I'm just not going to mention it type of thing, you know?
Yeah, because, it's impossible to be passionate and also make money. That's not allowed.
Right. And there are a great many people who think, like, Let's Play you shouldn't make money off of, you know, and things like that.
Some people do, but yeah.
Speaking as someone whose income is publicly available, some people fucking hate it.
Oh, of course they do. Absolutely.
Yeah, they do.
I I will never have a Patreon account for that reason. I don't want people to know. It's just easier that way.
I'm gonna tell you though, as I'm going for my MBA and stuff, and I'm just gonna say, as a rule, you shouldn't try to make money just from like what a person will give you as a salary. That's not how like successful people do it. You know, is to wait for someone to pay them. You know what I mean? No. There's a fine line between like entrepreneur and sucker and con man and things like that, but like you shouldn't just automatically categorize. No, that method of payment is invalid because it's not the way I make my money. It's just my little thing on that. But anyway, but neither of you should be making money off Let's Play, is my point with that.
Okay, right.
Okay, right.
I'm glad you got that cleared up.
And it's a tricky thing, right? Because you say, like, no, you know what? I'm going to be pure. I'm going to do this just for my own edification. I'll work my job and all that. That's fine, but then the people who are making money off of it, they're going to be doing it full time. They're going to be making more videos, and they're going to be dictating the sort of direction that Let's Play and things like that are going to be going into, you know?
Yeah, they're going to be setting the trends. You know, there's no question that PewDiePie has set a great many trends when it comes to either the kind of games being played, how they're presented, or how they're being played.
Right.
The face cam thing probably obviously didn't start with PewDiePie, but he certainly popularized it. There's no doubt about that.
He is to scare cams what Resident Evil was to survival horror. It may not have originated it, but it's thanks to him we know what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
No,
so thank you for that, Felix. Much appreciated.
But, right, you know. And you can see that happen because Something Awful is like where this kind of like started. And unfortunately, SA has this culture of being kind of like too hip for the room. And nobody really wanted to like own it because it was, it's nerdy, even though we like it and we watch it, but it's nerdy. Don't get too into it. And I, of course, participated in that. And then, but look what happens now is, like you say, you get these face cams, you get people who can sometimes override the game with their personality, and it sort of got away from us, and remains away from us. But yeah, if you are in that camp of like, I'm never gonna make the money off of it, that means then you're gonna hand that direction over to someone else who says, okay, well, I'm happy to make this my job and spend this money on new equipment and explore new ways of doing things with that leisure time, or not leisure time, but it's your job, and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from experience with that because before I really went whole hog with the YouTube stuff, I worked at Destructoid as a written reviews guy, written news guy, and had that attitude of, well, I can do video on the side, I'm not really going to commit to it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of old games media had that attitude. And we had for many years at Destructoid, they would talk about video's the future, we got to do something with video, but it's not making us any money, so we won't put much effort into it, we won't commit full time. Mm-hmm. And the world of video was dictated, the future was made, but Detroit wasn't there.
Yes.
And I wasn't there, because I simultaneously was frightened enough of the rise of video to know I had to do something about it, and arrogant enough to go, I'm a writer, damn it, and not do
I did the same thing
video.
as a podcaster, man. My wife had to drag me into video kicking and screaming. It's like, no, the future is live online radio at 128 kbps. It's like, no, it isn't. Thank God for her.
And and even I had all these. I was like trying to tell people, like, don't ever talk during cutscenes. Don't even mention them. Don't put your face on there. Don't overpower the game. It's all about the game. And well, I was wrong, everyone.
Well, to be fair, I use those guidelines in many ways. SA, for those who don't know, had a set of rules, essentially, as kind of a guideline as to how to Let's Play, essentially. And there were all sorts of things in there, including something which I don't believe is the case anymore. There was actually an arbitrary time limit as to when you could start a Let's Play. And I think it started off as 6 months after the game came out, right?
Right. This was when we got the Let's Play sub forum, because Let's Play kind of hit big at one point, started crowding out the games forum.
Yeah, it did.
And all the other threads, so they made a Let's Play dedicated forum. And the games mod in charge, Axe Maniac, well, first there was no rule. But someone did the game Hitman Blood Money. I think it was a screenshot Let's Play about a week after it came out. And it was just the kind of thing where it's the thing that annoys me. It's like, hey, I feel like playing a video game. I might as well get E-famous too. And just kind of thoughtlessly sort of like, here's some pictures I took. I don't know what this thing is. Maybe I jump over here. Maybe I don't. I got game over. See you next update.
Well, I mean, SA will shit on you hard for poor quality content. I know that from experience.
Oh, yeah, and that's exactly what happened. And because of that, one person, Axemaniac, said, no, you're going to wait 6 months post-release, and that's the rule. And then when I took over modding there, I dropped it to 3 to try to, maybe keep that sort of, but stay a little competitive. And it gets really complicated then with things like DLC and re-releases and European versus North American releases, and it was kind of a headache that way. And again, people tend to overclassify everything, so you get into that. But the nice thing about that buffer zone, though, is that it does give people who do want to play the game at least some time. And I wouldn't suggest, obviously, nowadays a 3-month window, but
it'd be impossible now.
Oh, yeah, of course it would. And there's no way to do it. But if you said a 1-day or 2-day kind of window, at least then somebody can get ahead of your Let's Play and enjoy it maybe even more, as they can compare your playthrough to their own or something like that. But again, you could never enforce that, and some people do just
not on YouTube. Yeah, it's very much Wild West. And as we go back to the topic of Day Zero Let's Play, there's a lot of money in that, and there will be a lot of money in the Metal Gear playthrough, which is why I found the comments hilarious. Who's gonna watch that? Are you kidding me? Who isn't gonna watch that? You think people have that strong a constitution that they'll be able to resist?
Yeah.
Even half the people who hate spoilers, they'll watch it. They won't be able to help themselves.
Exactly. Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right. It's right there tantalizing you. How can you resist?
Yeah, and Metal Gear Solid is happening, and you're not there to see it. How can you live with that?
How can you not be part of the cultural zeitgeist?
I urge all of you listening to this to pull up a picture of Game Over Greggy, and how can you resist that face? Come on, look at him.
That cherubim face.
Hashtag Team
You can't
Fat.
say no to that.
please watch my Let's Plays, my review of Metal Gear: The Phantom Pain, etc.
Indeed.
But anyway, sorry.
All right, so here, let me ask the hard question. Let's throw the hard ball on this one.
I gotta go.
So, bearing in mind we are still talking about video games, not foreign affairs, what kind of moral obligation does Mr. Greg Miller have to the gaming community as a whole to prevent the propagation of spoilers and the ruining of people's experiences?
I'm going to start here. If this were any other company in the world, I would say, you know what? I don't know, pick a company. Treasure. Treasure knows what they're doing. They know what they want this person to release. They're going to let him do certain things. They might tell him not to say certain things. This is a little more of a marketing thing or a commercial thing. So, I'm sure it'll be okay. But this is Konami. So all bets are off, For all I know, this could be like some Brewster's Million scheme where they're saying, fuck it, spoil everything in episode. All right, but realistically speaking, I think I think he has an obligation to sort of give his honest, kind of playthrough of it. I know he probably can't rag on something he hates per se, but to not kind of make it an advertisement that's being called a Let's Play, if he can. Obviously, he sounds like he's doing the right thing in terms of putting the intro after launch, so maybe we'll be seeing pure gameplay experience. Things like, here's some side mission, here's some online play with Mother Base, etc. What do they call it? That's like the forward operating base, that type of, although I guess there's no one online to play with, but things like that. I think that's probably what he's going to focus on, and I think that's fine. And maybe Konami will have given him things to tease people with, like, here's a pop revelation coming up, we gotta draw the line, Again, I think it would behoove him not to have it look like or turn out like a big commercial, but that's kind of where I like to see it go, I guess.
Okay.
I think for me, I'd actually, with regards to It's Konami, go in the opposite direction, because especially if any of the rumors about the company's treatment of its employees are anything to go by, there's no company better at locking shit down and restricting things, and just removing any freedom anybody who works with them might have. So I almost think the moral equation isn't part of this, because Greg probably has no choice with what he can and can't show, and may very well be just going, on a like he probably has the amount of freedom in that open world as you have in Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. Like, he may very well be walking without sprinting through a very linear path, just looking at goats flying away on balloons and just checking his script every now and then to point at it and go, haha, that's a funny goat on a balloon. Oh shit, 15 minutes in, time for the cardboard box.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I think Greg's better than that. I don't think he will do that. But, I trust those guys to do the right thing, I guess, because I think they are very, especially people who are they're in a similar situation to me. They're funded on Patreon. They're closer, I guess, to their community than some other types of entertainers or some other types of reviewers might be. Yeah. They read their comments.
And, it's funny, and to be fair to him, too, he's not... he's someone with he has 2 channels, and he and his crew have 2 channels, and on this channel it's about 115k subscribers. I know that's meaningless, but I know people rank with that. So it's not a giant number. So in a way, this is kind of a big break. So you kind of can't blame somebody in the YouTube game. This is a pretty big thing,
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the YouTubers who might be angry are kind of funny for this. If they were in the same position, they'd take it with both hands. They would just eat that up. Yum, yum, yum. I see that a lot from a lot of, I guess, competitors. Now, YouTube, in my personal experience, has been way less competitive than old media, where sites hate each other and backbite and try not to give each other credit for stories.
Sure.
YouTube is a lot more supportive of that, but there also can be a lot of bitterness there.
Oh, absolutely, no doubt.
I mean, I remember whenever I talk about it's lessened now, but when I first started doing serious YouTube content on my own channel rather than Destructoids, and was really proud of how quick it had grown and how quick subscribers had gone up, I used to get some very bitter and angry comments from other YouTubers who had been doing it longer and hadn't had that success. So I think there's a lot of that's coming up with the kind of funny situation here with Greg Miller's playthrough. And yeah, I think most of those people who are angry would easily have taken the unfair advantage themselves.
Well, that's...
And I possibly would have if in some weird alternate dimension Konami liked me at all. But at the same time, I totally agree that there's... The biggest moral imperative for Greg would be to not have this be an advertisement, would be to not have this just be him as a marketer, as a glorified marketer, as a promoter who isn't being paid by Konami, is just being paid on exposure like a freelance writer for a games website.
And that brings up a really interesting point, because it brings up the line, I suppose, if such a thing even exists, between someone who is reviewing the game and someone who is let's playing the game for entertainment. Now, Greg is doing both, and we are also where he has this exclusive right to do this let's play. Now, I don't know about you, and obviously, I know Greg reasonably well. I mean, he's been on my show. I don't claim that he's a friend that I talk to every day or anything, but, he seemed like a reasonably good egg. But the thing that kind of concerns me about that is it seems to me that he's being given quite a few advantages by a company whose product he is also supposed to critique. Now, I don't think anyone really expects Phantom Pain to be terrible. That's highly unlikely.
Yeah.
But regardless, doesn't that put him in a situation where he may be biased, his opinion may be compromised, even if he doesn't realize it?
Absolutely. There is a subconscious bias there. I mean, I talk about this because for me, even though I think there is a larger imperative for critics to have a higher ethical standard, I also don't feel that doing stuff just for entertainment, when you're a tastemaker, when you're a trendsetter, means you shouldn't have to worry about it. Even if you're doing a video for entertainment purposes, you're still influencing buyers of a product, and you should have some responsibility
in many cases, because a lot of these guys have younger audiences that are more easily influenced, and that means your duty of care must be higher.
I think that's entirely fair as well. So there is that responsibility there, and we can't, even when we're confident in our own ethical standards, our ability to be incorruptible, we do still have to understand that subconscious bias exists, and this is a reason why I so heavily disclose doing even a squirty play, which is just my my throwaway fucking 10 to 30 minute videos.
Opinions are opinions. It doesn't matter what format they're presented in.
Yeah. Exactly. So if I do something like when I covered Consuming Shadow, I've worked with the artsy quite closely on video series before. Gotta disclose that, quite happily disclose that, because I trust myself as much as anyone can trust themselves. But, my audience does not have that ability to crawl around inside my head with a flashlight and know how on the up and up I am. The best thing I can do is just say, here's the situation, do with the information what you will. Don't be a dick about it, please, but use that to inform your opinion of what I'm saying about the game. And I did this with Volume as well. I've got a cameo voice acting role in it.
I know Mike Biffle reasonably well. We speak reasonably frequently, so I'm like, well, this is a guy that I've talked to about something other than business. I could consider him a friend of some description. I'd better tell people that. I
think that's the fairest thing to do, and I guess a disclosure isn't necessary in something like Greg Miller's case, where the very nature of its existence is a disclosure of the relationship. We already know what's happening.
Well, that said, though, I mean, as you said yourself, there's a duty to care to it, because you still have people who, aren't super informed watching the video. They're just going to come into this and say, Phantom Pain footage, yes.
Yeah, because they've stumbled upon it through the search engine. That was that actually brought up the disclosure issue with advertorial content that a lot of YouTubers have been wrestling with over the last few years. And I was in this camp as well before I learned that I'm a dumbass and I should be much, much better at it, which was, my audience knows. Yeah, they know this because I've talked about it on the podcast, or I've talked about it on Twitter or whatever. That's no good. Someone might have stumbled across it through a search engine. They might not know who I am at all. It's got to be front and center. You can't... It's got to be in a place where it can't be missed. It can't be avoided.
Yeah, and I think it's good we're having those conversations now, just because I mean, hell, years and years ago at Destructoid, I'd have done the same things. There'd have been things I probably should have disclosed better that probably didn't, because, the audience knows, I don't have to care.
Yeah.
And at least now this stuff's coming out more and more, and we're having this discussion, we're having this getting a few guidelines down as to what disclosure means and what it should be, and I feel that's a really good thing. And you're probably right where you say, I guess I'm wrong to say Greg doesn't have to disclose it. It should be pretty damn clear, regardless of what the audience knows,
Slowbeef
exactly
1,
what's
Sterling
going on.
0. Sorry.
I think
I'll get you next time, Slowbeef.
I think in the case of Greg, the way that I would personally like him to do it, it's either at the start of every video or at least in the description, is to say, look, this is an exclusive Let's Play, and I've been given permission to do so by Konami. That, to me, is enough information, because the viewer can then infer, so Konami has favored this guy, and he's been given an advantage over others. So maybe I should look at it through that lens. I should consider his opinion as not unbiased. I shouldn't go crazy and say, you're being paid to like this. But I should consider that there's going to be some bias there, because there's no such thing as unbiased coverage, regardless of what it is. And it really is just about informing the consumer at that point.
And I do feel that the audience appreciates that more often than not. Some people will try and use it as a cudgel to hit you back with it.
I've seen that. We saw that very recently with Volume, but ultimately, it's still the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Those guys.
Absolutely.
I mean, I saw some. I was made aware of some discussion where people were upset with me because I was having a go at someone who's been a right nicker about. I don't know why I said nicker. Just a complete arsehat about my association with Volume, and they were like
I read it.
Putting preemptive words in my mouth where it's like, if you didn't have a cameo in this, then you'd have slagged this off. I'm like, fuck off, you don't know what I would have done or what I wouldn't have
done. I was
done.
going to say, congratulations for your mind-reading ability. I hope you're making good bank off that. Yeah, that's incredible.
And I complained about this guy, and some people thought I was therefore complaining about having to disclose in the first place.
Which is totally not
absolutely
true.
not.
No.
My complaint is this small minority of people who want to discourage disclosure by turning it into this just this something they've got in the bag to attack you with later, which I find just very scummy. As disclosure, I love disclosing things because it makes me feel pretty damn guilt-free, especially as someone who has a guilt complex. It makes me feel good to get that out there straight front and center. I think it makes the audience feel respected, and most people enjoy the disclosure and allows them to trust that content creator more. I enjoy disclosing and those opportunities where I guess have to disclose. I don't view it as having to do it. It's something I'm happy to do.
And I will say, as someone with next to no connections to anyone, I feel really important the few times I can disclose. It's great. I feel like a somebody. For once.
Oh yeah. It's like, I know this developer.
I had this guy on a podcast. I'm playing his game.
I did not have sexual relationships with that woman. Yeah, it's just very, very important. And the thing is, like, Greg Miller's a professional. I would be very surprised if he did not. That would be a big surprise to me. I don't know how often he's had to do it before, because I don't follow his work that closely, but I would expect someone with that degree of experience would know to disclose that correctly.
I would expect a very high caliber professionalism from Game Over Greggy, yes. No, I'm kidding, but
well, he was born to eat chicken wings and play video games, after all.
Yeah. And again, the thing I'd like to, point out is, like, I do understand the reaction and such, It's maybe a little unfair to him because, again, in the beginning, I think he could have maybe communicated what he was doing a little better at first,
Welcome to Twitter, What can you fit in 140 characters that won't make people angry? It's an ongoing quest.
No, sure, exactly right. I understand that, and we discussed it, but,
It is definitely better to front load something, I think you could have anticipated some of that reaction. Probably not the go kill yourself stuff, even though if he's been on the internet for long enough. We always have that optimistic hope that when we wake up in the morning, someone isn't going to tell us to kill ourselves today.
Oh yeah, like whenever I talk about some shit I get, people go, are you surprised? It's like, yes, because I want to have hope.
Think the best of you.
Yeah, I want to think we can get through something without a death threat, without, calls for harassment. But... yeah, so I was shocked at the viciousness with the reaction, and I know I shouldn't have been, but, what can you do? At the end of the day, Greg has been given a pretty damn golden opportunity, one that I think a lot of people would have taken, one that's going to help his channel out, one that won't be a problem so long as he's on the ball, so long as he understands what to avoid doing, what to do, and Greg's been doing this for a long, long time, and something tells me the worst that's going to happen is he's going to have some pretty entertaining videos out of it, and yeah, I think so long as he avoids the pitfalls, that's what I expect to see, and that's what I always expect to see from Greg, is he's just going to fuck around in Metal Gear Solid 5, have a laugh, and I really don't think anything too tragic's going to come out of it.
Yeah, if I was to take the cruel, evil, capitalistic viewpoint on this, it's that we've talked about the haves and have-nots, but ultimately we are talking about a hyper-competitive environment that for many people is a business, and they're not behooven to some sort of imaginary Bushido that says, no, this is dishonorable, you cannot, this must be a face-to-face, mano-a-mano fight, 10 paces, turn around at dawn. Really, if you can get an advantage like that, and it's not a case of selling out to do it. You don't have to sell out your credibility. You don't have to agree to something that you wouldn't otherwise agree to. In my case, if I was offered this, I would turn it down because I don't let's play. Like, not in the traditional way, not in the way that he's going to do it here. I wouldn't do an episodic let's play of Metal Gear Solid 5. That would be entirely out of character. Mm-hmm. And people would call me on that, and they'd be right to call me on that, because they're saying, right, well, you are definitely just doing this for the money and the attention. And my honest answer to that would be, yes, I am. And I'm doing something outside of what I'd normally do for that, and that is the very definition of selling out, But it isn't really for him. He does Let's Play. He also does journalistic stuff. It's a fine line to walk, and he will certainly be challenged to do that. And he's going to have to be careful with his disclosure. but I don't necessarily shed any tears if someone who has made enough contacts to get access early is able to exploit that early access to gain something out of it. It's a case of Let's Play is, sadly, perhaps for some people, now a business. There's a lot of money in it. It's got to the point where YouTube is developing their own app for gaming because they realize that gaming is their biggest moneymaker on YouTube at this point, you know? So I think we have to accept that reality. You know, we can hold ourselves to our own principles, but we can't necessarily expect everybody else to follow them in that regard because they're just trying to make scratch like everybody else, and they're just trying to pay their rent. I
mean, if you don't want to be the one guy with the longbow when everyone else has got the new crossbows in, you know? It's It is that issue of, it is sad, and I say this as someone who benefits from the system. I'm benefiting from the system, but I do also miss when it was more free and open, but I realise that's not the way it's ever going to be again. So you've got to take what you can get. You've got to... And you can do it without, you know, selling out. You can do it without, you know, I would never take a world exclusive review, no matter how good that would be for my website.
Sure.
I would never agree to only say nice things about a thing. But if there's something that comes on my desk that I can do without violating my existing principles, I'm going to go for it. It might not be fair play to someone else who doesn't get that opportunity, but I'm probably going to take it. You know, I got a preview copy of Dropsy this week and played it for a Squirty play, you know, and that
considering
was
the company we have here, it's so amusing that we both have copies of Dropsy. Slowbeef, you remember Dropsy, right?
Of course, I remember Dropsy.
Who
I saw the Squirty play on it, and thank you for the name drop. You know, and it's funny you say that because it kind of gets back to that little aside we had about Patreon and things like that. And like I said, if you're an entrepreneur type of person, I'm probably mangling that. You know, it's a fine line between being like a chump who's kind of like, oh, I would never take money for that, and it's like, well, maybe in some cases you should take like seeing these opportunities. You should take advantage of that stuff, and it's very, very hard to find that line of to say, where am I being exploitative and where am I just doing like taking a natural advantage of something and being smart about it. And then maybe for some people that line's completely different. I don't know.
And I think that's probably the most important thing, is to find your line and let the audience know where that line is so that they know what to expect from you.
That's good advice, actually. I never thought of that. Another one, too, is to find your line and let random people on the internet tell you the line was somewhere else and you crossed it.
Yes.
I think that's
absolutely.
probably, what's the more realistic option.
Definitely. People like to apply their own unrealistic expectations to you. So things that they've built up over time that you didn't even know about. It's like, oh, how did I give you these expectations? And there's generally not a good answer to that.
Yeah.
That's something they built that up in their mind. Yeah.
I used to say that game reviewers, back when game reviewers were more hated than they are now, if you can believe such a time, I once said that they never have more unrealistic expectations, like high expectations. I'll start this again because it was a really good phrase when I first came up with it. I don't want to mangle it. Never have such high expectations been had for people that are thought so lowly of. Like, simultaneously shitting on game reviewers and saying they're the worst people on earth, and then being furious when they're not holding themselves to higher ethical standards than respected newspapers have. That these people have, who clearly don't have experience in the business or anything, have dreamt up these really lofty, I'm not saying they're not noble, these noble goals that are so unrealistic that you could never live up to what they've done, which again just is why you've got to find your own line and say, this is my line, this is where I'm at. If you don't like it, I'm sorry, but this is the situation. You're going to have to deal with it.
No, you're right. You can't let other people define that for you, you know?
No. I mean, if they've got advice, listen to, I'm not saying completely don't listen to your audience, but ultimately the final decision comes down to you as the content creator, and people need not be furious if you're not living up to their expectations, because that's their expectations, they're not your expectations.
I advise that everyone does not listen to their audience at any point. It's just a waste of time. It's giving you a headache. You don't want to do that. It's very stressful.
Well, I need people to contribute to my Patreon.
You know what side your bread's buttered on, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so we've done like an hour on this, unbelievably. I said a crazy kind of niche topic there, but summation, I suppose. Any sort of final thoughts from either of you guys on the evil Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain Let's Play?
I think the true evil, again, is Konami.
That's always the case, isn't it?
Yeah. And you wonder, they're very YouTube unfriendly lately. Lots of copyright claims, strikes.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. It's so strange, isn't it?
I was going to bring that up, like the amount of copyright strike. Then they tried to copyright strike Super Bunny Hop.
Yeah, and then
hitting people with content
It's
ID.
a trap. This is what it is. It's a trap for Greg Miller. He's going to get all parts up and then strike, done. It's like, I wouldn't trust Nintendo with this either. They want that ad revenue so badly.
What's going to happen is they're going to hand deliver this copy of the game. They're going to come in a big box, and he's like, what is it? And they're going to say, it's the new Phantom Pain, and it will be a pachinko machine.
Pull the lever. Do it, Greggy.
Yeah, and you do wonder what, like, if this is just some PR, like, if they're like, maybe we should buy some YouTube PR before we withdraw from video games. But, no. There's almost no one, really, who could have taken this deal that everyone would have been like, yes, that's the person who deserves this, I mean, obviously, I have candidates, really, like my friend Chip Chizumu does Metal Gear Let's Plays, and they're the most thorough things you could ever ask for.
He is phenomenal at what he does.
He
Absolutely
really
incredible.
Really is, like, But there's many people who haven't heard of him, and they have their own idea of who should, quote unquote, do the Metal Gear Let's Play. There's no one on the internet who could have taken this deal that everyone would have been happy with, And again, and like we said, it's Twitter and et cetera. If he'd maybe communicated exactly what he was going to be doing a little better out of the gate, maybe the outrage would have lessened, but it would probably still be there, to be frank.
Yeah, someone's always going to be pissed off. You can never remove the damage. You can only mitigate. And again, this comes from someone who's gone that crowdfunding route where disclosure and being as open as you can is the most important thing you can do. And someone's still going to be annoyed that you've done it, but all you can do is put all your cards out on the table and say, here they are, look at them. If they're not good enough for you, I'm sorry. Because there's nothing else you can do. There is nothing else you can do except just bite that bullet, throw the truth of the situation out there, and you then just let the chips fall where they may, and they are all the metaphors I know.
Fair enough. Yeah, my final thoughts on it is like, look, he's taking an advantage that makes sense for him in terms of his business. I certainly think that there is a duty of care to try and not spoil as much as possible, but invariably, since we're in a culture where literally everything is considered a spoiler by somebody, regardless, I think that as long as he maintains a reasonable level of care, then that's not too bad. He's already demonstrated that he's willing to do that by making sure the hospital scene is not released until the first day. But ultimately, if he didn't do it, Konami would have easily offered it to somebody else, and they would have happily done it, no doubt. This is obviously something Konami wanted to do one way or the other, and as much as it sucks to get spoiled, and it does, it's not the end of the world. It's the little plot points are not as important as the overall experience, and I like to think that with video games, the real experience is when you play it, not something you've heard third hand from someone else that's played it. And I would hope that Metal Gear Solid 5 is a good enough game to mitigate any sort of story spoiler and still be a really enjoyable experience for everybody that picks it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There we go. There's our wrap-up of this. Sorry, if you wanted us to condemn that as evil, I'm afraid not. That's not happening today, but I'm sure some of you will at some point. And
I'm gonna renege and call this evil right after this.
Okay, right, it's evil. Yeah, absolutely. You go and write something on Tumblr about that, absolutely. But hopefully you have enjoyed this discussion, and my name has been TotalBiscuit. You can find me, of course, on this channel if you've just stumbled across this. This is youtube.com/cynicalbrit, and you can find Jim Sterling over at...
Jim Sterling. It's pretty simple. Jim Sterling on Twitter, Jim Sterling on YouTube. Just type Jim in Google, and I come up on the second result now, so...
That's exciting.
I know, Google's fucked. Someone's getting fired from Google for that, but I'm not hard to find, is the situation there.
And if you'd like to check out Slowbeef's work, where do you go?
Oh boy, you can go to one of my 2 YouTube channels, Retsu Pray, where we riff on stuff. It's RETSUPURAE. I don't work in marketing, I'm sorry.
You know, I still misspell it to this day. I keep coming across that fake channel.
Everyone does.
What you need to do is get a Retsu Pray pachinko machine. Really get the brand out there.
Pull the lever.
I have one. You can also find me on my own personal YouTube, which is Slowbeef, just exactly how it's spelled, and on Twitch I'm effin Slowbeef, EFFIN Slowbeef.
Indeed, he's a power-hungry moderator in our Twitch channel. He does a good job. What can I say? All right, folks, that pretty much wraps us up for this discussion. Thank you very much for sitting around. If you happen to make it to the end of this video, don't worry, we haven't got any special surprise or end credit scene or anything for you, so you can safely go away now. But thanks for watching. Please check out the rest of the stuff that we do on YouTube. We're not terrible people, honest.
Aristais.
We'll see you next time.